Welcome to episode 55 on the law report. Today I'm going to look at the proposed amendments to the Turks and Caicos Islands Status Ordinance, and I'm going to discuss the press release that was circulated by the Ministry of Home Affairs, Transportation, Energy and Utilities and Communications Commission, and the public consultation that is to commence in relation to the amendments. I'm going to discuss the rationale put forward by the ministry for the amendments. But before I do, my usual disclaimer: this is not legal advice, should not be construed as legal advice. For legal advice, please contact an attorney of your choice. Welcome back. So the press release sets out some background information giving the rationale for the changes that are proposed to the ordinance. The Turks and Caicos Islands government seeks to adopt the following changes to the Turks and Caicos Islands Status Ordinance, referred to as the Ordinance. There are proposals for the treatment of dependents of persons granted island status, proposals for the treatment of dependents of persons with island status by descent, proposal for the DNA testing of all applicants, and proposal for the introduction of an evaluation criteria. These changes, according to the press release, will ensure that the ordinance is amended to capture loopholes that were realized and to make sure that there is a modern, transparent, and fair process in place that has a predefined protocol for the treatment of applicants. The Turks and Caicos Islander Status Ordinance, Sections 1 and 13, established a Turks and Caicos Islander Status Commission with the responsibility of reviewing applications for the grant of islander status, otherwise done by marriage, and for making recommendation to the governor for the grant of such status. So the commission, according to the press release and according to the law, is only responsible for dealing with applications for Turks and Caicos Islands status that are not by virtue of marriage. In reviewing such applications, the press release continues, Sections 4, subsection 7 and Section 4, subsection 9 of the ordinance require the Commission to consider whether or not an applicant meets any prescribed criteria as may be set out by the governor as guidelines for the evaluation of the degree to which an applicant's personal and professional attributes prove valuable to the Turks and Caicos Islands. This approach will clearly define the needs and requirements of the islands for persons seeking to obtain permanent status as a Turks and Caicos Islander. Similar point and merit-based system are currently being used by a number of countries throughout the region and the wider world to regulate and coordinate the composition and growth of their populations in order to meet and satisfy the economic and immigration needs and goals of their nations. So we are essentially moving to a point-based system as in other countries in the region and other developed countries. Regarding the issue of dependence and their transition to becoming Turks and Caicos Islander, there are gaps in the ordinance that do not speak to dependence of persons granted islander status and children, whether dependent or older, of persons who receive their islander status by descent, where the existing provision in the ordinance do not qualify their child to acquire islander status. Currently, the dependent child of a person granted by marriage does not automatically get the status of his or her parent, but instead has to apply separately to the commission for the same status as the parent. There is no provision for the dependent child of a parent who was granted otherwise than by marriage. So the intention is to find a pathway for these children that falls into any of the categories mentioned above. So as it stands currently, if a person is married to a Turks and Caicos Islander, person of another nationality, over time they would become, by grant of marriage, a Turks and Caicos Islander. But let's say that they come into the marriage with a child, a minor child. There's no provision for that child to become a Turks and Caicos Islander automatically. And so the ordinance seeks, or the amendments to the ordinance seeks to bridge this gap. Alternatively, a person who is granted by other means Turks and Caicos Islander status, that and at the time when they were granted, they had minor children. The children do not automatically become Turks and Caicos Islander. And so, again, the amendments proposed seek to bridge this gap or to close this loophole, as I understand it. We return to the press release. The Ministry of Home Affairs, Transportation, Broadcasting, Utilities, and Telecommunications Commission therefore invites the public to review and provide feedback on the draft amendments by reviewing the attached documents as well as undertaking a survey, which is linked below in the press release. Now, the press release sets out what they believe will be the benefit to these proposed amendments. One, the site that it will better identify and attract persons who have contributed and continue to contribute to the Turks and Caicos Islands. That it will provide a more transparent, efficient, and objective evaluation process that is aligned with the ordinance and to improve compliance with guidelines and reduce the scope for abuse. And the purpose for the survey as set out by the press release is that the survey seeks an understanding of those qualities and values that the public deem to be beneficial to the long-term development and growth of the population in regard to persons meeting the qualification to be granted Turks and Caicos Islands status. The survey seeks to rank those values that the public deems as the priorities to be considered in the evaluation process. The survey will also seek the view as to whether the need for DNA test submission should be a prerequisite for application. Likewise, the survey will seek to capture views and the treatment of dependent children of persons granted islander status. That is, what should be the process for them to obtain status. And finally, the survey will seek to capture views and the treatment of children, whether dependent or older, of persons with island status by descent. How would a generational child of an islander transition to status if he or she falls outside the threshold that the ordinance currently provides? The survey will run from the 5th of June to the 23rd of June 2023. And accompanying that survey will be the draft regulation which will govern the process, or which will be the regulations to the ordinance. In a subsequent episode, I will look at those regulations. This is where I will leave it for today. I thank you for watching, and I will see you in another episode.